Sarah wiped the red dust from her visor and stared at the numbers on her screen. The quota had gone up again. 3 months ago, her mining crew needed to extract 50 tons of ore per day. Last month it became 70. Now the overseer demanded 90, and her crew was already working 18-hour shifts. She looked around the cavern at her people. 43 humans, bent over their tools, exhausted. Most of them had been born here on 442B. They had never seen Earth. They had never seen anything but these red rocks and the cold metal of the Concordat facility above. The overseer, a named or watched them from his platform. His 4 arms crossed over his chitinous chest. His compound eyes reflected no emotion, no mercy. They were hive-minded, connected to their queens across light years. Individual suffering meant nothing to them. Sarah's grandfather used to tell her stories. He was old enough to remember the time before, barely. He spoke of a thing called NASA, of rockets and dreams. The Concordat had erased all of that from official records when they found Earth 300 years ago. Humans were classified as a primitive species, suitable only for labor. They installed genetic markers in human DNA that made rebellion almost impossible. When a human even thought about disobeying, their own body would shut down the impulse. It was perfect control. But grandfather's journal, hidden in Sarah's quarters, told a different story. Humans had reached for the stars once. They had built machines and dreamed impossible dreams. The Concordat had stolen that future. Or descended from his platform. His clawed feet clicked on the stone floor. He moved toward a young miner named David Park. The boy was 19, skinny, working as fast as he could. It wasn't fast enough. Insufficient output, or said in the flat, translated voice that all Concordat overseers used. Unit designate Park David. Penalty, termination. Sarah felt her heart stop. Termination. They were going to kill him for not working fast enough. Wait, she said. The word came out before she could stop it. Speaking without permission was forbidden. Her genetic markers should have prevented it, should have made her throat close, made her mind go blank. But the word had come out anyway. Or turned his massive head toward her. Unit designates, Sarah. You speak without authorization. Explain. He's young, Sarah said, more words flowing freely. Something was wrong with her markers, or maybe something was right. Give him another chance. I'll cover his shortage. Negative, or said. Efficiency quotas are absolute. 1 unit failure requires 1 unit termination. This maintains optimal fear levels among remaining units. He pulled out a plasma pistol. David backed against the wall, eyes wide. The other miners watched, frozen. This had happened before. It would happen again. This was how the Concordat maintained control across 848 enslaved species for 12,000 years. Fear. Absolute, unquestionable fear. Or aimed the weapon at David's head. Sarah moved without thinking. She grabbed a mining pick and swung it with all her strength. The pointed end smashed into Or's thorax, cracking through the chitin armor. The overseer stumbled backward, mandibles clicking in shock. Impossible, Or said. Genetic compliance prevents violence against Concordat personnel. This cannot occur. Sarah hit him again, and again. The genetic markers that should have paralyzed her, should have made her collapse in agony, did nothing. She felt free. She felt alive. She felt human. Or fell. Green blood pooled on the cavern floor. Sarah stood over him, breathing hard, the pick still in her hands. 43 miners stared at her in absolute silence. He's dead, someone whispered. She killed an overseer. They'll kill us all, another voice said. The Concordat will execute everyone on this planet. Sarah looked at them, her people, broken, afraid, raised to believe they deserved this slavery. She thought of grandfather's journal. She thought of the humans who had reached for the stars before the Concordat came. No, she said, we fight back. We can't, David said, still shaking. The genetic markers, we can't fight them, it's impossible. Sarah walked to the communications panel on the wall. She expected alarms, expected Concordat soldiers to burst in. But the facility was large and or had been alone in this section. She had minutes, maybe less. She activated the emergency broadcast system. It would reach every human frequency on 442B, every mining colony, every processing facility, every slave quarter. "My name is Sarah," she said into the microphone. 300 years ago, the Concordat found Earth. They told us we were primitive. They told us we needed their guidance. They put chains in our DNA and erased our history. But I found the truth. We had a space program. We had dreams. We were reaching for the stars when they took it all away. Her hands shook as she spoke. Somewhere, alarms would be going off. Concordat authorities would be mobilizing. "They lied to us," she continued. "They said the genetic markers were permanent, but mine just failed. I killed an overseer with my bare hands. If mine can fail, maybe yours can too. Maybe we don't have to be slaves anymore. Maybe we can be free." She stopped the transmission. In the cavern, her crew stood frozen. Then slowly, David picked up a mining tool, then another miner, then another. "What do?" someone asked. "We get to the surface," Sarah said. "We take the weapons locker. We prepare for what comes next." They moved through the tunnels, 43 miners who had never fought, never rebelled, never even dreamed of freedom. Sarah led them upward, toward the surface facility where the Concordat kept their weapons and vehicles. The facility was chaos when they emerged. Sarah's broadcast had reached everywhere. Humans were running, some toward the armory, some toward the landing pads. Concordat soldiers, a mix of warriors, were trying to restore order. Plasma fire lit up the red dust. Sarah saw a soldier grab a human woman and throw her to the ground. Without thinking, Sarah ran forward and tackled the alien. They crashed together into the dust. The ore was stronger, faster, trained for combat. Sarah was a miner who had never thrown a punch in her life. But she was angry, 300 years of anger compressed into one moment. She grabbed a rock and smashed it into the ore's face. Again, again. The warrior stopped moving. Around her, other humans were fighting, dying, winning. The genetic compliance that had kept humanity enslaved for 3 centuries was failing, person by person, moment by moment. The Concordat had never planned for this. In 12,000 years, no enslaved species had ever broken free of the genetic locks. They hadn't counted on human adaptability. 300 years was enough time for human biology to evolve, to find the cracks in the prison the Concordat had built inside human DNA. Sarah reached the armory. A dozen humans were already inside, pulling plasma rifles off the walls, loading themselves with weapons they barely knew how to use. Sarah grabbed a rifle and a communicator. She switched to the planet-wide human frequency. "This is Sarah. The Concordat will send ships. They'll try to crush this rebellion before it spreads. We need to hold the landing pads. We need to take their ships. We need to tell Earth what happened here." "We can't win," someone said beside her. "There are billions of them, millions of ships, 5 empires that have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years." Sarah looked at the human, a middle-aged man with scars from years of mining. "Maybe we can't win," she said, "but we can fight, and maybe that's enough." The Concordat ships arrived within hours. 3 heavy cruisers packed with soldiers. They expected to find a frightened population, ready to submit. Instead, they found humans with stolen weapons, fighting like they had nothing to lose. Because they didn't. The Concordat's only options were slavery or death. Sarah and her people had chosen a third option, freedom, no matter the cost. The battle for 442B lasted 3 days. Sarah survived, though thousands didn't. When it was over, the humans controlled the planet. They had captured 2 Concordat ships and killed an admiral who had come to personally oversee the suppression. Sarah stood in the command center of the captured flagship, looking at the star charts. Earth was marked in red, a slave world. Dozens of other human colonies, all marked the same way. Beyond them, hundreds of worlds belonging to the other 847 enslaved species. What now? David asked. The young miner had survived, had fought, had killed. He looked different now. They all did. Now we go to Earth, Sarah said. We tell them what we learned. The chains can break. The empires can fall. We just have to be brave enough to try. She sent a message on every frequency she could access. It would take time to reach Earth, to reach the other human worlds, but it would reach them. Humanity was unchained, the message said. Join us. Across the galaxy, in the courts of the five empires, alarms began to sound. The Concordat had faced rebellions before, small and easily crushed. But this was different. This was humanity, a species that should have been safely locked away, spreading a message more dangerous than any weapon. Hope. The message from 442B reached Earth 6 days later. Was in his apartment in New Shanghai when his illegal communicator crackled to life. Illegal because humans weren't supposed to have long-range communications. Illegal because the Concordat controlled all information flow. Illegal because had spent 10 years fighting in the Concordat's border wars, and he knew exactly how to steal their equipment. He listened to Sarah's words, listened to her impossible claim. The genetic markers had failed. Humans had fought back. An entire planet had been liberated. Sat in the dark for a long time after the message ended. He was 45 years old. He had killed for the Concordat on 17 different worlds, suppressing rebellions by species whose names he didn't even know. The genetic compliance had forced him to do it, had made him a weapon against others who wanted the same thing he did. Freedom. He thought about his daughter, 8 years old, already assigned to a manufacturing facility. She would spend her life building components for Concordat ships, never knowing that humans had once built their own vessels, had once dreamed of exploring the universe. Made a decision. He activated his old military contacts, humans who had served in the Concordat forces. Most were like him, veterans who had no choice but to fight. The genetic markers made them into perfect soldiers, until now. Did you hear the message from? He asked when he reached the first contact. Yes, came the reply. Lieutenant Jackson Park, retired after losing an arm in the Concordat's war against the Collective. I've been trying to lift my weapon for the past hour, training my mind to fight the compliance. It's working. It's actually working. Gather everyone you can trust, said. We're taking the Shanghai garrison. The plan was insane. The garrison housed 3,000 Concordat soldiers, mostly or warriors and shock troops, had maybe 200 humans, most of them old, injured, or untrained. But they had something the Concordat didn't expect, knowledge of how their military actually worked. Had spent a decade learning Concordat tactics. They were rigid, predictable, built on the assumption of absolute superiority. They had fought the same way for 12,000 years because nothing had ever forced them to change. Their generals were selected by birth, not skill. Their strategies came from ancient manuals, not adaptation. Humans knew were different. Humans improvised, humans learned, humans changed. The attack came at dawn, led his people through the underground service tunnels that the Concordat didn't even guard. Why would they? Slaves couldn't rebel. The genetic markers made it impossible. They emerged inside the garrison's power station, planted the explosives himself, charges he had made from mining supplies and stolen Concordat detonators. When the power died, the garrison's shields dropped. The automated defenses went offline. For 30 seconds, the facility was vulnerable. 30 seconds was enough. Human resistance fighters poured in from 6 different entry points. They had crude weapons, stolen plasma rifles, mining tools, and desperation. The Concordat soldiers, waking to alarms and chaos, responded with their standard defensive formation. Had fought alongside them for years. He knew exactly where the gaps were. He directed his people with hand signals, using the confusion to maximum advantage. 3 minutes into the battle, they controlled the armory. 5 minutes in, they had the vehicle bay. 10 minutes in, the garrison commander, a crystal being named Shard of Morning, ordered a full retreat. It was the first time in recorded history that a Concordat garrison had retreated from slaves. Stood in the command center, breathing hard, blood on his hands. Around him, humans cheered. They had won. They had actually won. But knew this was just the beginning. He accessed the garrison's communication system and patched into Earth's hidden human network. The network that had been built in secret over decades, waiting for a moment that most people thought would never come. "This is," he said, "former Concordat soldier, current free human. The Shanghai garrison is ours. 442B is free. It's time for Earth to wake up." The response was overwhelming. In Seoul, humans took the manufacturing district. In Lagos, they seized the water processing plants. They captured an entire Concordat command ship that had been docked for repairs. The rebellion spread like fire, each success proving that the impossible was possible. The Concordat responded with overwhelming force. Fleet Admiral Han of the Dominion personally led 200 warships to Earth. His orders were simple: crush the rebellion, execute the ringleaders, reimpose genetic compliance on the survivors. Make an example that would terrify the other 847 enslaved species. Watched the fleet arrive from the captured garrison sensors, 200 ships, each one capable of destroying a city. Earth's population was 14 billion humans. They had maybe 10,000 fighters with actual weapons. The math was brutally simple. "We can't fight that," Jackson said, standing beside. "We need to evacuate. Get as many people off-world as we can." "No," said. He was thinking, calculating, remembering every battle he had fought for the Concordat. "We don't fight them head-on. We make them fight us." He explained his plan. It was desperate, probably suicidal, but it was better than nothing. The Concordat expected humans to either surrender or die bravely in a hopeless last stand. They didn't expect strategy. When Fleet Admiral Han's flagship entered Earth's atmosphere, it was met by a transmission. Broadcasting from the captured garrison, offered to surrender personally. He would come aboard the flagship with 100 humans. They would submit to execution if the Concordat spared Earth's population. Han accepted. It was the logical choice. Public executions would reinforce Concordat authority. The rebellion would end before it spread further. And his 100 volunteers boarded a transport. They were scanned, disarmed, stripped of anything that could be a weapon. Han was not a fool. The humans were brought to the flagship's main deck, where Concordat soldiers from all 5 empires waited. This execution would be broadcast across the galaxy. "You fought well," Han said through his translator, his mandibles clicking with what might have been respect. "For primitives, but the Concordat has ruled for 12,000 years. We will rule for 12,000 more. Your rebellion ends here." Looked at the Admiral, looked at the soldiers, looked at the cameras broadcasting this moment to billions of beings across the galaxy. "You're right," said. "Our rebellion ends here, but not the way you think." He pressed a button hidden under his tongue, a transmitter so small the scanners had missed it. Throughout the flagship, in the engine room, in the weapons bay, in the shield generators, small charges detonated. Not enough to destroy the ship, just enough to disable it. The charges had been planted weeks ago by human maintenance workers. Workers the Concordat never suspected because slaves couldn't rebel. The genetic markers made it impossible. As the flagship systems failed and his volunteers attacked, they had no weapons, but they had trained for this. They knew anatomy, knew where the soft points were beneath the chitin. They knew how to kill with their bare hands. The battle was short and brutal, lost 70 of his people, but Fleet Admiral Han died, his mandibles broken, his compound eyes shattered. The command crew died. The broadcast continued, showing the galaxy something it had never seen before. Humans killing Concordat leaders, humans taking a flagship, humans doing the impossible. Took control of the ship's communication system. He addressed the Concordat fleet still in orbit. "This is, your admiral is dead. Your flagship is ours. You can destroy us, destroy Earth, but the message is already out there. Humanity is free, and we're not going back in chains." The Concordat fleet had 200 ships. They could turn Earth to glass, but they hesitated because something impossible had happened. A species they had controlled for 3 centuries had not only rebelled but had won actual victories. The genetic locks were failing. The perfect system of control was breaking down. While the Concordat fleet debated, sent a new message, not just to humans but to every enslaved species in the galaxy, to the 847 worlds that lived under Concordat rule. "We were slaves," the message said. "We were told we couldn't fight back. We were told it was impossible, but we're fighting. We're winning. The empires aren't invincible. They're just old, slow, and afraid. If we can do this, so can you." On the merchant worlds, slaves in the manufacturing plants stopped working. On or colony worlds, warrior-caste soldiers found their slave soldiers refusing orders. On crystal stations, entire populations of worker beings went dormant, shutting down the power grids. The Concordat fleet retreated from Earth, not because humanity had defeated them militarily, but because they suddenly had 847 other problems. The impossible was happening across the galaxy. The enslaved were rising. Stood on the bridge of the captured flagship, exhausted, wounded, victorious. Beside him, Jackson looked at the tactical display showing the spreading rebellions. "We did it," Jackson whispered. "We actually did it." "No," said, "we started it, now we have to finish it." The Concordat Council convened on their ancient seat of power, a massive station at the galactic core called Unity Prime. Representatives from all 5 empires gathered for the first time in 3 centuries. The crystalline, the hive-minded, the merchant lords of the Compact, the warrior clans of Or, and the mysterious ethereals who had founded the Concordat 12,000 years ago. They were panicking. In the 3 months since Sarah killed an overseer on 442b, the Concordat had lost control of 247 worlds. The genetic compliance markers were failing across multiple species. The impossible was becoming routine. "The humans must be exterminated," declared War Prince Or of the Or. "Completely. Every world, every colony, every individual. We remove them from the galaxy, and the rebellion dies with them." "Inefficient," clicked Empress of the. "Human population exceeds 18 billion across 43 worlds. Extermination would require 30% of total Concordat military forces for minimum 18 months. During this time, other species rebellions would expand exponentially. Probability of total Concordat collapse, 78%. "Then we negotiate," said Merchant Lord. "Offer the humans limited autonomy, conditional freedom, maintain control through economic dependency rather than genetic compliance." "Impossible," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. An ethereal, a being of pure energy contained in a shimmering field, materialized in the center of the council chamber. The ethereals rarely spoke, rarely appeared. They were the eldest species, the ones who had built the Concordat when the galaxy was young. Autonomy for one species creates precedent for all species. The system cannot accommodate freedom. It can only accommodate control. "Then what do you propose?" asked Crystal Mind Shard of Unity, speaking for the collective consciousness. "We deploy the Void Engine," the ethereal said simply. Silence filled the chamber. The Void Engine was a weapon from the old wars before the Concordat, when the 5 empires had fought each other for dominance. It could sterilize entire sectors of space, turning living worlds into dead rocks. It had been forbidden, locked away, deemed too terrible to ever use again. "That would kill billions," Merchant Lord protested. "Not just humans, Every species in their sectors, our own people. Acceptable losses, the ethereal replied. The alternative is the end of Concordat authority, 12,000 years of order collapsing into chaos. We save the galaxy by sacrificing a small portion of it. The vote was close. The Or agreed immediately. The calculated and found the logic sound. The opposed but were outvoted. The abstained. The ethereals cast the deciding vote. The void engine would be deployed to human space. Every world, every colony, every human would be erased. The other enslaved species would learn what happened to those who rebelled. But the Concordat had made a critical mistake. They debated openly, believing their communications were secure. They didn't know that had access to Fleet Admiral Hand's command codes. They didn't know that humans were listening. When Sarah receives warning about the Void Engine, she was on New Harmony, a human agricultural world that had liberated itself 2 months earlier. She had become the unofficial leader of the human resistance, the symbol of rebellion that the Concordat feared most. She gathered her command staff in a bunker deep beneath New Harmony's surface, attended via hologram from Earth. Representatives from 16 other freed human worlds joined them. The Void Engine will be deployed in 72 hours, explained. It launches from Unity Prime, travels through 11 jump gates, emerges in human space. Once activated, we have perhaps 6 hours before it sterilizes every planet we control. Can we stop it? Asked David Park, who had survived and now commanded the defense forces on New Harmony. The engine is housed on an ethereal dreadnought, said, 5 times the size of a normal capital ship, shielded by weapons we've never seen, guarded by the personal fleets of all 5 empires. We'd need 1,000 ships to even scratch it. We have maybe 60 captured vessels. So we're dead, someone said. We fought for freedom and we're going to die for it. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing Unity Prime, the ancient station where the Concordat had ruled the galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed. She thought about something had taught her. The Concordat's weakness was their age, their rigidity, their absolute certainty that they were right. We don't attack the Void Engine, Sarah said slowly, an idea forming. We attack Unity Prime. That's suicide, Jackson protested. Unity Prime has defenses that have never been breached. It's the most protected location in the galaxy. Because they've never needed to defend it, Sarah replied. For 12,000 years, no one has been crazy enough to attack the Concordat's heart. They'll have most of their forces protecting the Void Engine. Unity Prime will be vulnerable. And if we capture Unity Prime? Asked, understanding dawning on his face. Then we broadcast the truth, Sarah said. We show every enslaved species what we've learned. The Concordat isn't invincible. They're old, scared, and desperate. They're willing to use weapons that would kill billions of their own people just to maintain control. We show the galaxy what we're really fighting against. The plan was desperate, insane, probably impossible. They would take every ship they had, every fighter who could hold a weapon, and attack the most fortified position in the galaxy. Most of them would die. Maybe all of them would die. I'm in, said. We all are, David added, and around the room heads nodded. They gathered their fleet at New Harmony. 63 captured Concordat vessels, retrofitted and repaired by human engineers who were learning to understand alien technology faster than should be possible. 30,000 fighters, most of them former miners, factory workers, and farmers who had never imagined they would become soldiers. Sarah addressed them before they departed. No grand speeches, no false promises, just the truth. The Concordat is sending a weapon that will kill every human in space, she said. Billions of us. Men, women, children, everyone. We can't stop that weapon, but we can make sure the galaxy knows what they did. We can make sure our deaths mean something. And if we survive, someone called out. Sarah smiled. Then we keep fighting until every slave in the galaxy is free or until we're all dead. Either way, we win, because we chose this. We chose to fight. We chose to be free. The fleet jumped toward Unity Prime. It took 3 days to cross the distance, 3 days knowing that the Void engine was moving toward their homes, 3 days to prepare for what they all knew was probably a suicide mission. When they emerged in the Unity Prime sector, they found the defenses exactly as they expected. Massive, overwhelming, impossible to defeat, but thin because most of the Concordat's forces were escorting the Void engine. The battle began. Human ships, small and fast, darted between the enormous Concordat vessels. They used tactics that had never been seen in this sector, maneuvers that sacrificed defense for speed, strategies that were pure chaos. The Concordat defenders, trained in 12,000 years of tradition, struggled to adapt. Sarah piloted one of the lead ships, weaving through plasma fire, her crew working frantically around her. They lost ships, dozens of them, but they pushed forward, driven by desperation and determination. Commanded the assault on Unity Prime's docking bay. His people breached the station with boarding torpedoes, cutting through layers of defense. They fought room by room, corridor by corridor. The Concordat defenders were skilled, but they were comfortable, soft from of unchallenged rule. People were hungry, desperate, and fighting for something the Concordat couldn't understand. Survival. Sarah's ship crashed into Unity Prime's central command tower. She and her team fought their way to the council chamber, where the 5 empires had ruled the galaxy since before human history began. They found it empty except for a single ethereal, waiting in the center of the chamber. "You cannot win," the ethereal said, its voice echoing from everywhere. "Even if you take this station, the Void engine will complete its mission. Humanity will be extinct within days." "Maybe," Sarah said, raising a plasma rifle she had taken from a fallen soldier. "But everyone will know what you did. Every enslaved species will know that the Great Concordat was willing to kill billions to maintain control. You think that will make them submit. You think that will make them afraid. It will make them angry. It will make them fight harder." "Then the galaxy burns," the ethereal replied. "Chaos, war, suffering. The Concordat brought order, peace, stability." "You brought slavery," Sarah said, "and we're done with it." She pulled the trigger. The ethereal's containment field shattered. Pure energy dispersed into nothingness. The last founder of the Concordat died on the station they had built to rule forever. Reached the broadcast center. He activated every communication channel in the galaxy, piggybacking on the Concordat's own network. Every world, every species, every being with a receiver heard what came next. "This is broadcasting from Unity Prime," he said. "The Concordat has deployed a weapon called the Void engine. It will kill every human in space, billions of us. They're doing this because we dared to be free, because we broke the chains they put in our DNA, because we showed that the empires can be defeated." He displayed the council's recordings, showing the debate, showing the decision, showing the Concordat's willingness to commit genocide to maintain control. "They're afraid of us," continued. "Afraid of you, afraid that if one species can break free, others will follow. And you know what? They're right to be afraid, because we're not stopping. We're not surrendering. We're fighting, and we're going to keep fighting until every slave in this galaxy is free." The message spread. On 800 worlds, enslaved beings looked up from their work and realized something fundamental. The Concordat wasn't divine. They weren't invincible. They were just old empires, terrified of change, willing to kill rather than adapt. And if humans could fight them, why couldn't everyone else? The rebellions exploded. Not just slaves, but Concordat citizens tired of serving empires that valued control over life. Merchants who wanted to trade freely, or warriors who wanted to choose their own battles, drones who wanted to think for themselves, crystals who wanted to grow beyond their rigid hierarchies. The Concordat had maintained control through fear, and genetic manipulation. But fear fades when people see the powerful can be defeated. And genetic manipulation means nothing when entire populations choose freedom over safety. The Void engine never completed its mission. Its crew, seeing the galaxy turning against the Concordat, they disabled the weapon and surrendered it to human forces. The commander, or warrior named L, spoke to personally. "My people are taught that strength is everything," L said, "but you've shown a different kind of strength. The strength to fight when you have no chance of winning. The strength to die rather than kneel. That is true warrior spirit. I will fight with you, not against you." Sarah stood in the council chamber of Unity Prime, where the 5 empires had ruled for 12,000 years. Around her, humans and aliens worked together, dismantling the symbols of Concordat authority. Outside, the galaxy was in chaos. Hundreds of worlds were fighting for freedom. The old empires were fracturing, their unity shattered. Joined her, limping from a wound he'd taken in the final assault. "We did it," he said quietly. "We actually did it." "No," Sarah replied. "We started it. The galaxy has to finish it." She activated the station's communications one final time. Her message went to every world, every species, every being who had ever lived under Concordat rule. "My name is Sarah. 3 months ago I was a slave. Today I'm free, and so are you. The Concordat is broken. The empires are falling. What comes next is up to all of us. We can build something better, not empires, not control, just freedom. The right to choose our own path, the right to reach for the stars." She paused, thinking of her grandfather, of the journal he'd kept, of the dreams humanity had lost when the Concordat arrived. "Humanity was unchained," she said, "and we broke the empires that tried to hold us. Now it's your turn, be free." 10 years later, Sarah stood on Earth, watching ships from 100 different species arrive for the first meeting of the Galactic Assembly. Not an empire, not a Concordat, just free peoples trying to build something new together. Stood beside her, older now, tired but satisfied. "Think it will last?" he asked. "Probably not," Sarah admitted. "We'll make mistakes, we'll fight, we'll struggle, but at least we'll do it as free beings, not as slaves." She thought of 442B, where it all began. The mine where she killed an overseer. The moment when she first realized the chains could break. Humanity had been enslaved for 3 centuries. The Concordat had ruled for 12,000 years. But in the end, it only took one person to start the change. One person to say no. One person to fight back. And once that started, nothing could stop it. Not genetic markers. Not ancient empires. Not weapons that could sterilize worlds. Because freedom, once tasted, once fought for, once won, was more powerful than any force the old order could bring to bear. The galaxy had changed. Not because humanity was special, but because humanity had refused to accept that their chains were unbreakable. And in refusing, they had shown 847 other species that they could refuse too. The empires had collapsed. The slaves were free. And across the galaxy, beings of every species looked up at the stars and dreamed of what came next. Together,